Picture this: a single conversation that prevents a nuclear war, one meeting that saves an entire civilization from extinction, a handshake that changes the balance of world power forever. Sounds like Hollywood, right? Except these things actually happen. Throughout history, certain people have pulled off negotiations that seemed absolutely impossible, deals that defied logic, agreements that shouldn't exist. And here's the wild part: most of them had zero formal training, no business school, no sales seminars, no negotiation coaching. They just understood something we've completely forgotten. What was it? And why did we lose it along the way? The beginning, when every deal was a matter of survival. It jumped back to October 1962. The world is 13 days away from nuclear annihilation. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Soviet missiles in Cuba. American missiles in Turkey. Two superpowers playing chicken with humanity's existence. John F. Kennedy is in the White House. Nikita Khrushchev is in the Kremlin. And neither one can afford to look weak. The military advisors are pushing for invasion. The hawks want war. The clock is ticking. And then something unexpected happens. Kennedy makes a move that his entire cabinet thinks is insane. He offers Khrushchev a private deal. Remove your missiles from Cuba, and secretly, months later, we'll remove ours from Turkey. Publicly, America wins. Privately, both sides get what they want. The deal works. The world doesn't end. But here's what's fascinating. Kennedy didn't invent this strategy. He borrowed it from negotiators who lived 2,000 years before him. Roman senators used to do this all the time. Public victory, private compromise. The appearance of strength, the reality of pragmatism. Compare that to today's negotiation culture. We're obsessed with transparency, with win-win, with everybody leaving happy. But the greatest strategists in history, they understood that sometimes the best deal is the one nobody fully understands. They knew negotiation wasn't about fairness. It was about survival. The cases nobody talks about. Here's one that'll blow your mind. Napoleon has just been defeated. France is occupied. The victors Britain, Russia, Austria, Prussia are carving up Europe like a Thanksgiving turkey. And then this guy walks into the Congress of Vienna. Charles Maurice de Talleyrand. He's representing France, the losing side, the country everyone hates, the nation that just spent 20 years trying to conquer all of them. Talleyrand has no army, no leverage, no cards to play. 6 months later, France walks out of Vienna with almost all its territory intact. Some historians even say Talleyrand walked away with more than he came in with. How? He did something brilliant. He stopped acting like the loser. Instead, he positioned himself as the referee. He created conflicts between the winners. He whispered in ears. He made Britain worry about Russia. He made Austria nervous about Prussia. According to diplomatic records, Talleyrand never raised his voice once. He just asked questions, planted doubts, let the winners tear themselves apart. By the end, they needed France to balance the power. The irony? Today, we'd call this playing politics. Back then, it was called genius, or take Hernán Cortés in 1519. Guy shows up in Mexico with 600 men. The Aztec Empire has millions. Logically, he should have been wiped out in a week. Instead, he negotiated alliances with tribes that hated the Aztecs. Didn't even need to fight most battles. Just turned the empire against itself. Was it brutal? Absolutely. But from a pure negotiation standpoint, it's one of the most effective uses of leverage in history. He didn't have power. He created the perception of power. The shift. Nobody noticed. Here's where things get interesting. Somewhere along the way, we decided negotiation should be right. We created rules, ethics, guidelines. We started teaching people that negotiation is about collaboration, about finding middle ground, about everyone feeling good. But the historical masters didn't think that way. They thought in terms of asymmetry, of information gaps, of strategic ambiguity. Take Thomas Jefferson buying Louisiana in 1803. Napoleon needed money for his wars. Jefferson wanted land. Seems straightforward, right? Except Jefferson did something sneaky. He sent 2 negotiators to Paris, James Monroe and Robert Livingston. He told them to buy just New Orleans, but when they got there, Napoleon out of nowhere offered them the entire Louisiana territory, 828,000 square miles, for $15 million. Monroe and Livingston weren't even authorized to make that deal, but they took it anyway. Why did Napoleon do it? Because Jefferson's team had spent months creating the impression that America might just take New Orleans by force, that Britain might help them, that France was vulnerable. None of it was true. America's military was tiny, but the perception was enough. Jefferson doubled the size of the United States without firing a shot. That's not collaboration. That's psychological warfare. The techniques that actually work. So what did these people do differently? First, strategic patience. Abraham Lincoln was a master at this. During the Civil War, he wanted to free the slaves, but he knew he couldn't do it too early. He'd lose support from border states. So he waited and waited, let the war drag on, let public opinion shift. And then, at exactly the right moment, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, not because it was morally right. He always knew that, but because the timing was finally right. Today, we're terrible at this. We push for deals before they're ready. We force conversations. We rush. Second technique: controlled anger. Nikita Khrushchev, that Soviet leader from the Cuban Missile Crisis, he once took off his shoe at the United Nations and banged it on the table. Everyone thought he'd lost his mind, but years later, people who worked with him said it was calculated. He wanted people to think he was unpredictable, dangerous. Because if your opponent thinks you might do something crazy, they're more likely to give you what you want just to avoid the risk. We see this in business all the time. Steve Jobs was famous for his reality distortion field. He'd tell engineers something was impossible, then scream at them until they figured it out. Was it healthy? No. Did it work? Ask the iPhone. Third technique: the vanishing opportunity. Henry Kissinger used this constantly. He'd negotiate with multiple countries at once: China, Soviet Union, Vietnam, and he'd make each one think the deal was about to disappear. We're close to an agreement with the other side. You should probably decide soon. Creates urgency, creates fear of missing out. Today, every good salesperson knows this trick. Limited time offers. Only 3 spots left. Price goes up tomorrow. We just don't realize we learned it from Cold War diplomats. WH80 This looks like in your world today. Now here's where it gets practical. You might be thinking, cool stories, but I'm not negotiating with empires. I'm trying to close a client, get a raise, win a contract. Fair, but the principles are identical. Take salary negotiation. Most people do it wrong. They research market rates. They make a logical case. They explain why they deserve more money, and then they wonder why it doesn't work. But if you study historical negotiators, you'd do it differently. You'd create outside options. Even if you're not actively looking for another job, you'd make sure your boss knows you're valuable elsewhere. You'd get a recruiter to reach out. You'd casually mention an offer even if you're not taking it. You wouldn't threaten. You'd just create uncertainty. Or take client negotiations. Most people focus on their product, features, benefits, price, but the masters focus on fear. What's the client afraid of? Missing a deadline? Looking bad to their boss? Losing market share? Find that fear, then position yourself as the only solution to it. That's not manipulation. That's understanding human psychology. Chris Voss, the former FBI hostage negotiator, built an entire methodology around this. His most famous technique? No-oriented questions. Instead of asking, "Is this a good time to talk?" which gets you a no, you asked, "Is this a bad time to talk?" Seems like semantics, but it changes everything, because people feel like they're in control when they say no, so you engineer situations where no actually helps you. Voss didn't invent this. Byzantine diplomats were doing it in 600 AD. Where this goes from here. But what about the future? AI is taking over more jobs. Remote work is killing face-to-face negotiation. Everything's moving to email and Slack. Doesn't that change everything? Actually, no, it makes these skills more valuable, not less. Because as work becomes more automated, human skills become rarer, and negotiation is fundamentally human. AI can generate arguments, it can analyze data, it can even predict outcomes, but it can't read body language over Zoom. It can't sense hesitation in someone's voice. It can't build trust. Not yet, anyway. Which means people who master negotiation are about to have a massive advantage. But here's the problem. Most negotiation training is terrible. It teaches scripts, formulas. Just follow these 7 steps. But real negotiation isn't a formula. It's improvisation. It's reading power dynamics in real time. It's knowing when to push and when to walk away. And almost nobody teaches that anymore. Which means most people are walking into negotiations blind. They think if they just have better logic, better data, better arguments, they'll win. But logic doesn't win negotiations. Leverage does. Timing does. Perception does. And until you understand that, you're going to keep losing deals you should win. Keep accepting offers you should refuse. Keep thinking negotiation is about being right, when really, it's about being strategic. So let's come back to the original question. How did historical strategists negotiate the impossible? They understood 3 things most people miss. Negotiation isn't about having the best argument. It's about controlling the frame. Negotiation isn't about talking more. It's about strategic silence. Negotiation isn't about win-win. It's about making the other side think they're winning. That manipulative? Maybe. But it's also exactly what's happening to you every single day. In meetings, in sales calls, in salary reviews, the only difference is whether you're aware of it or not. So here's my question for you. Which of these tactics have you seen used against you? And which one are you going to try first? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious. This content is for educational and analytical purposes only. Historical strategies are presented within context for learning about human dynamics and professional development, not to encourage unethical, manipulative, or harmful practices in modern settings.